Like most armies of the 18th century, the French army also had elite companies within every regiment of their infantry. And the senior of those was the Grenadier Company. Again, like most armies, these are troops that had originally been designated to toss grenades in action. By the late 18th century, this is almost entirely out of service. However, the Grenadiers remain as the distinctive and senior flank company in each regiment, being composed typically of the tallest, strongest, and sometimes the longest serving soldiers in a particular regiment. French Grenadiers by this time period had a number of distinctions. They remained one of the very few troops within the French army that were still carrying swords of some kind. In fact, this model right here is specifically that of the Grenadiers, although it's quite faint on the side. The image of an exploding bomb and the word grenadier or grenadier appears actually engraved on the blade of this sword. This was also part of the major reforms of the French army over the course of the late 1760s, this particular model being designated in 1767 and in use throughout this period all the way to the time of the French Revolution. This was the sword carried not only by grenadiers but by the other flank company of a French regiment at this time period, the chasseurs, or the light infantry, hunters, quite literally, as well as that would have been carried by non-commissioned officers like sergeants in the line, in addition to various other specialist troops. So this is a very common sword for the French army of the Revolutionary War period, manufactured in fact in the Royal Manufactory in Klingenthal in Alsace, which had been created to provide infantry weapons and others for the French army within the borders of the Kingdom of France. Now, the uniform of a French grenadier from this time period would have been identified by the sword, but also a few little trimmings on the uniform itself. From time to time, wearing a large bearskin cap, although this was suppressed at certain points during the 1770s, and on their shoulders they would have had distinctive emblems. By 1779, at the very least, a red shoulder strap, and we know from a number of visual references and other images that fringed epaulets in red like this were often worn somewhat unofficially to distinguish grenadier companies within individual French regiments, and so these would have been worn on the shoulders of a grenadier carrying a saber like this. Grenadiers like these were often brigaded together, that is, pulled out of their parent regiments to join special composite units for a particular campaign or even a particular assault, to bring together the best troops of the entire army and use them together. This happens throughout the French involvement in the global American Revolution at attacks like Savannah, Yorktown, Pensacola, Grenada. The French pull together their flank companies, their elite grenadiers, and use them to spearhead their assaults against British positions across the world during the American Revolution.